In eastern Ukraine, the city of Kramatorsk carries a dark past that reaches back to the 1980s. During those years, inside apartment 85 of this newly built complex, people began falling ill and dying suddenly. Doctors blamed every death on the same illness, leukemia, a form of blood cancer. Perhaps the most terrifying part of this story is that for many years, no one truly understood the cause. After multiple losses and no answers, residents grew anxious. From the outside, the building looked completely ordinary, yet it was anything but normal, and far more dangerous than anyone imagined. As we walk through the events that unfolded in this apartment, if you enjoy the video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe if you haven't already. In 1980, a mother and her 2 children moved into apartment 85 of building number 7 in the city of Kramatorsk, then part of the Soviet Union. All the units were modern for the time, offering warm water, a stylish elevator, and comforts far above the older Soviet-era buildings. But their excitement didn't last long. Just 1 year after moving in, the family's 17-year-old daughter suddenly developed leukemia and passed away only months later. At first, her family and the neighbors believed it was a tragic but random death. As the grieving mother and her son tried to cope, another tragedy struck. Only a year later, the 16-year-old boy also died after developing leukemia. Desperate for answers, the mother began questioning what was happening, but soon she too fell ill with the same disease and passed away shortly afterward. There was no one left from the family. Around the same time, other residents in the building were also suffering from sudden, severe illnesses, a clear sign that something was very wrong. Superstitions began to spread, claiming the apartment was cursed. When the deaths continued for the same reason, the lack of public attention meant the story never reached a wider audience, and doctors still couldn't identify a definite cause. So they attributed the illness to a weak genetic predisposition. Although that explanation sounded reasonable at the time, even if your sibling has leukemia, your chances of getting the disease are only slightly higher than a random person's. Nothing more. It was extremely unlikely for 3 people living in the same home to die of leukemia within such a short period. A few years after the first family's deaths, a new family moved into the same apartment, a mother, father, and 2 children. But just like the previous family, their fate turned out to be just as tragic. In 1987, the family's older son suddenly fell ill and was diagnosed with leukemia. While receiving treatment in the hospital, he died shortly after. As the parents buried their son, their other boy was also suffering from cancer and fighting for his life in the hospital. As expected, the family was devastated. Although the second child survived, the back-to-back tragedies made people believe the apartment was cursed. The father, convinced that the deadly illness must somehow be connected to the apartment, took action and filed a request for an official investigation. 2 years later, in 1989, researchers finally arrived to conduct tests in the building, including radiation measurements. When the radiologists tried to take air samples and measure radiation, they discovered something shocking even before entering the apartment. Readings taken right at the entrance of the building showed levels far above normal. A more powerful device was needed to calculate the exact radiation levels, and it was supplied through the Civil Defense Department. Once the radiology team entered the apartment, they detected extremely high levels of gamma radiation, strong enough to be fatal. The highest radiation level in the apartment was detected on the wall where the recently deceased child's bed had been. The same elevated readings appeared in the adjacent apartment behind that wall, and even in the unit 1 floor above. After this terrifying discovery, the residents of those apartments were immediately evacuated. The wall now had to be removed in a single piece for a full examination. To protect the workers and prevent the wall from breaking apart and creating an even more dangerous situation, thick lead plates were fixed over the section containing the radiation source. Then the wall was carefully detached and sent to the Kiev Nuclear Research Institute. When the wall was analyzed in the laboratory, researchers discovered that an extremely radioactive cesium-137 capsule only 8.4 millimeters in size, was embedded deep inside the concrete. This capsule emitted gamma and beta radiation strong enough to penetrate materials 4 times more easily than X-rays. The surface gamma exposure in the apartment measured around 1,800 Roentgens per year, nearly 10 times higher than the known dangerous threshold for humans. Cesium-137 is a radioactive isotope of the element cesium. It does not occur naturally. It forms during nuclear fission. Its most common uses are as a radiation source in medical and industrial applications. Its half-life is about 30 years, meaning it takes around 3 decades for half of it to decay. During radioactive decay, it emits high-energy gamma rays that easily penetrate matter, making cesium-137 potentially dangerous to human health when exposure is high or when it enters the body. As with most radiation-related hazards, the key factor is the dose. Everything made of atoms has a certain tolerance to radiation. Even the radiation released from an atomic bomb cannot cause permanent damage until a specific threshold is reached. But when exposure happens in an uncontrolled way, as it did in this apartment, permanent harm becomes far easier. Years later, the true cause of the tragedy had finally been uncovered. Now the real question was this: how did that capsule end up inside the wall? The serial number on the capsule revealed exactly where the material came from, and the story of how this small but deadly object found its way into the apartment wall began to unfold. The tragedy started in the late 1970s, when a radioactive material used in industrial equipment went missing at a nearby quarry. It ended up mixed with construction materials and was unknowingly used during building. The 1980 Moscow Olympics were the perfect opportunity for the Soviet Union to show other nations that communism was a system of prosperity, not the poverty the rest of the world imagined. To prove that the average citizen lived comfortably, new apartment blocks were built rapidly, and this required massive amounts of construction material. The Kuransk quarry took on much of this responsibility. Workers there were under intense pressure and long work hours. At some point, they accidentally lost a capsule containing radioactive cesium-137, a component used inside a radioisotope level gauge for measuring material density and thickness. What they didn't know was that the capsule had fallen directly into the pile of gravel. In this situation, gravel extraction should have been stopped immediately, but clearly, no one did that. After a superficial search, management was told that nothing had been found, and the effort to locate the capsule ended abruptly. Another device was pulled from storage to replace the missing one, and despite every possible danger, construction continued as if nothing had ever happened. This is how the cesium-137 capsule was unknowingly transported from the quarry to the construction site in the city of Kramatorsk, where the apartments were being built. And without anyone realizing it, the cursed wall of apartment 85 was constructed with its own radioactive capsule sealed inside. Only a year after people moved in, residents began dying of cancer one by one. After the contaminated wall was removed, radiation levels returned to normal, and radiologists reported that the apartment was now clean. But understandably, the residents remained cautious about possible contamination inside their own homes. The deadly dose of radiation caused the deaths of 4 people, and lower, but still harmful, levels left 17 others permanently injured. And that doesn't even include the radiation released into the surrounding environment. This is what makes radiation so terrifying. You can be exposed to a fatal dose without feeling anything, not until the final stages. And even if you survive the initial damage, you spend the rest of your life fearing cancer. Despite such a deadly mistake, no one was ever punished. Building number 7 still stands today, and radiation levels are back to normal. If you look closely at the building's exterior, you can still see the newer bricks, a silent monument to the tragedy. This radiological accident is a powerful reminder of why strict safety regulations for radioactive materials are so important and why unexplained deaths must always be investigated thoroughly. Even today, highly radioactive cesium-137 is used inside radiation level gauges to measure material density in mines and quarries. A brief exposure to the isotope can cause severe radiation burns, so anyone operating these devices must be extremely careful. Cesium-137 was a silent killer, hidden inside the wall of an apartment without anyone knowing. If you think something like this could never happen where you live, think again. People all over the world mishandle cesium-137 and are exposed to it, often by accident. And unfortunately, the only protection you have is hoping that no one at a quarry or factory makes a random mistake while handling radioactive material. Human error can be more terrifying than any horror story. Imagine saving for years to buy a new home, only to watch your family members die one by one. And when investigators finally examine your home, they find this material inside the wall. What would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Now, I'm off to prepare the next story for you. Take care and see you soon.